The Myers-Briggs mathematical types. What type of people can hope to understand mathematics? We contend that as a generality only 4 of the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types can be seriously mathematically literate. First of all, to be mathematically skilled you have to be an introvert. Our definition of introvert is a simple one. An introvert is someone who enjoys his own company and does not go out of his way to seek the company of others. An extrovert, on the other hand, enjoys the company of others and goes out of his way to avoid being on his own. To be a mathematician, you must have tremendous concentration, which implies being on your own without distractions. An extrovert, continually distracted by the company he cultivates, never has the time and opportunity to be a deep thinker. Profound thinking is almost exclusively reserved for people capable of being solitary for long periods. Secondly, mathematicians are usually highly intuitive. They can tune in, so to speak, to the mathematical fabric of the universe. Numbers, shapes and patterns present themselves as gifts to intuitives. Thirdly, mathematicians are highly likely to be thinkers. While entertainment is the terrain that appeals to feeling and sensing types, mathematics, science and philosophy appeal to thinkers. Thinkers like cold abstractions, vast patterns, ordered lists, organized building blocks, while entertainment types wallow in the sensations and feelings that words, images and action summon in their imagination. The 4 psychological types that predominantly fill the ranks of mathematicians are INJ, INP, INFP and ISP. ISPs and INFPs are the second rank of mathematicians. In the ISP case, these mathematicians are highly observant about the world they detect with their eyes and ears. They often love music, but they have a severe deficiency through their lack of intuition. INFPs are highly intuitive and can even feel mathematics to some extent, but they are hindered by their deficiency in terms of high-powered thinking. INJs and INPs are the first rank of mathematicians. INJs are incredibly intuitive and have enormous thinking power to accompany those intuitions. Similarly, INPs have vast thinking capacity supported by great intuition. The difference between the INJs and INPs is that the former reach judgments much more quickly. They grasp the significance of an intuition almost instantly. Almost effortlessly, they see vast patterns forming in their minds, linking things that would seem to have no connection at all as far as other Myers-Briggs types are concerned. However, their certainty that they are right means that they are not overly concerned with proving their assertions, and proof is of course essential to the mathematical project. INPs are the details people, the thinkers willing to dot the I's and cross the T's. They are mathematicians in the truest sense of the word, but they are not as quick to see and understand patterns as the INJs. The ideal mathematician would be someone who was a perfect hybrid of INJ and INP. In this series of books, we are not committed to providing laborious and intimidating mathematical proofs. Instead, we want to use just enough mathematics to provide solid conceptual foundations. In other words, this series is written from the INJ perspective, and we invite any INPs who may be reading this to fill in all of the details we will of necessity omit. This book is about broad-stroke mathematical concepts, not mathematical proofs. If we adopted the INP approach, this book would be the most daunting ever written and incomprehensible to anyone other than mathematicians. Our aim is to give an intelligent person, without a mathematical background, enough information to glimpse and grasp the mathematical basis of reality, and to appreciate its astonishing power, beauty and simplicity. Although the mathematical foundations of existence are indeed simple, the concepts that flow from them are mind-bogglingly difficult and baffling. The contents of this series will provide the greatest intellectual challenge of your life. Gottfried Leibniz, a Grand Master of the Illuminati and perhaps the greatest thinker of all time, declared that the best world is the one which is simplest in hypotheses and richest in phenomena. This is not just the formula for the best world but for the only world. The world pursues the path of least resistance. It takes the shortest path it can between 2 points. It never expends energy gratuitously. From the world's point of view, everything is as simple as it could possibly be. That might not seem the case from our perspective as human beings, but that's the way it is. By the end of this series, you will hopefully have a full understanding of the simple hypotheses from which the world is built, and you will marvel at the astonishing complexity and richness that flows from them. Yet the apparent complexity is a product not of nature but of the false common sense view of the world that humanity has constructed based on numerous fallacies. Even science, humanity's most successful endeavor, is packed with errors caused by paying too much attention to our unreliable senses and not enough to our potentially infallible reason. For example, we see colors all around us, yet a logical deconstruction of the concept of color shows that the world does not objectively contain any color at all. As neuroscientist Bolato said, color doesn't exist. It is a construct of your brain. There is nothing literal about color in the world. If all human beings had the genes for total color blindness, it would never even have occurred to anyone that the sky was blue or that there was any such phenomenon as color. What does it mean to assert that our genes are the cause of color perception? The genes belong to us and not to the objects that allegedly exhibit the color. Is Kant therefore right that our minds are creating their own reality independent of the true world? But no one can question the rational mathematical statement that 1 + 1 = 2. That is an eternal, incontestable, immutable truth. Reason, not our senses, reveals the absolute truth of existence. Our senses continually deceive us. They were not designed as organs of truth but as means for allowing us to adapt successfully to life on Earth. We see only a tiny portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, visible light. The rest of the spectrum is invisible to us. Until Scotsman James Clerk Maxwell's revolutionary theory of electromagnetism arrived in the second half of the 19th century, we had no idea what light really was and knew nothing about any electromagnetic spectrum. Our senses failed to detect any such spectrum because it's not what they were designed for. They evolved for reasons of survival, not reasons of truth or completeness. So why do scientists so slavishly revere the evidence of our senses and have such contempt for the exercise of the highest and purest reason? Reason alone can reveal the absolute truth of existence, and what subject is the essence of reason? Mathematics. Although mathematics is conventionally regarded as an abstract tool, we shall introduce a second type of mathematics that we have labeled ontological mathematics. This means that it does not treat mathematical entities as mere paper abstractions and symbols but as things with real existence. Ontological mathematics might also be called the mathematics of energy, since that's what it's fundamentally about. Numbers written on paper have no energy content. Numbers written in space-time most certainly do. Manipulation of numbers on paper has no energy implications, but it does in space-time. Things that can be done effortlessly on paper may not be possible ontologically because of these energy considerations. This is the fundamental difference between abstract and ontological mathematics. Think of all of the subatomic particles listed by scientists. Do any of these particles have any properties that cannot be characterized mathematically? There isn't a single thing about them that isn't defined by numbers, shapes, quantities, dimensions and mathematical formula. That is all the stuff of mathematics. So in what way are these objects of science rather than objects of mathematics? It's only because we, humanity, have chosen to think of mathematics as fundamentally unreal and abstract that we perversely regard objects that are in every way defined mathematically, and which have no non-mathematical features, as objects of science rather than of mathematics. Quantum mechanics, relativity theory and M-theory, the theory that is trying to harmonize quantum mechanics and relativity, are all astoundingly mathematical. Are these scientific theories or ontological mathematical theories? If we rebrand science as ontological mathematics, then it becomes much clearer why abstract mathematics reflects science so well. Science is just mathematics as reality rather than as abstraction. There's a gulf between conventional science and ontological mathematics in terms of three critical numbers: 0, infinity and the imaginary number, I. Conventional science, an expression of extreme philosophical materialism, asserts that 0, infinity and the imaginary number have no ontological reality within any region of space and time. Conventional science involves a hypothesis that only real numbers are ontological or have any bearing on reality. There is not a single rational reason why this should be the case, it is pure empiricist materialist dogmatism. Science refuses to address the issue of why it accepts only real numbers greater than 0 and less than infinity. It gives no rational reason for rejecting 0, infinity, negative numbers and imaginary numbers beyond the simplistic one that they are not empirically detectable. Science thus enshrines empiricist materialism in how it regards mathematics. This is not a scientific but a philosophical stance, and indeed a faith-based position, since the ontology of mathematics is not something that can be determined via fallible human senses. Abstract mathematics, which is no ideological hostility to 0, infinity and the imaginary number or negative numbers for that matter, is considered irrelevant to science in respect of these key numbers. Any scientist will tell you that nothing infinite can exist within any localized region of reality because it would literally destroy the fabric of existence in that region, and no such catastrophic tears are observed except, arguably, in the specific cases of the mysterious singularities associated with black holes and the Big Bang. Scientists maintain that there is something wrong with the existing scientific theories regarding singularities and their dreaded infinities, and that these problems will be resolved by some new theory such as M-theory. Scientists will also tell you that they associate 0 with non-existence, that is, it is devoid of ontological significance. Descartes defined res cogitans, thinking substance, as having no extension, that is, it had no presence in the extended world of matter. Scientists, as strict materialists, have dismissed the Cartesian concept of independent thinking substance, mind. Mind, for scientists, is a mysterious aspect of matter. It cannot exist separately from matter, hence is some kind of material phenomenon or epiphenomenon. According to science, the Cartesian mind, the domain of 0, is pure nonsense. It simply isn't there. Of all the catastrophic errors of science, this is the greatest because it turns out that 0 is the quintessence of existence and completely defines it. As for the imaginary number, I, this appears in a vast number of scientific equations, yet scientists regard it as purely instrumental, that is, it helps to produce the right answers but has no ontological reality. Mathematician Marcus du Sautoy declared, calculating with imaginary numbers is the mathematical equivalent of believing in fairies. It seems extraordinary that extremely highly qualified individuals should accept fairies in the midst of some of the most successful theories and equations of all time, and not conclude that either these theories and equations are the purest moonshine, or else imaginary numbers are anything but imaginary. It is poverty of both reason and imagination that makes mainstream scientists and mathematicians so blind to the ontological reality of imaginary numbers. There are no fairies in mathematics. Neither 0, infinity nor imaginary numbers are fairies. On the contrary, they are essential to existence. They are the most solid, substantial entities of them all, every bit as solid and ontological as real numbers. So, Illuminism defines two types of mathematics: abstract, conducted purely in the mind or on paper, and ontological, that unfolds as reality itself. The two are of course extremely closely related, with energy being what separates them. Ontological mathematics can be further divided into ontological mathematical materialism, science, and ontological mathematical idealism, the mathematics of 0 and infinity. The imaginary number belongs to mathematical materialism, though scientists haven't grasped this yet. What this means is that the imaginary number has real existence in the physical world, which is why it appears in so many key equations of science. It is not an instrument for getting the right answer, it is part of the fabric of reality. In fact, it is the basis of time. The two branches of ontological mathematics constitute a complete account of reality, a grand unified theory if you will. What the two branches achieve is the resolution of Cartesian dualism. Descartes divided reality into two separate domains of mind and matter, but could not give any plausible explanation of how the two domains interact. Despite being a brilliant mathematician and acknowledging that mathematical knowledge is the primary source of truth, Descartes failed to make the intuitive leap that would have made him a god amongst men. He didn't grasp that mind belongs to the mathematical domain of 0 and infinity, while matter belongs to the mathematical domain of everything that exists between those two numbers, and that together they embrace everything that can possibly exist from zero to infinity in all directions. There is therefore no dualism at all between mind and matter. They are part of a seamless mathematical continuum, and they communicate and interact effortlessly via their common language of mathematics. It's the unique properties and qualities of zero and infinity that separate them from the rest of mathematics and make mind seem radically different from matter. In fact, the two domains are just different manifestations of ontological mathematics. There is no dualism, no mystery, no magic, no baffling enigma of how mind and matter interact. They are not two different substances but the same substance, mathematical substance. Where science regards mathematics as an invaluable tool for revealing the secrets of the scientific world, Illuminism regards science as an invaluable tool for helping to reveal the secrets of the mathematical world. Mathematics is not only the answer to Cartesian dualism but also to the Kantian dualism of noumenon and phenomenon. In fact, these two dualisms are ultimately the same. The noumenal realm was originally defined by Plato as the world of ideas apprehended by the philosophical, rational mind, while the phenomenal realm was the world of sensory reality in which the unphilosophical and animalistic were permanently trapped, that is, their primitive minds could never take them to the noumenal domain. The tendency of modern philosophy is to support science in denying the possibility of knowledge gained independently of the senses. Kant famously asserted that although the noumenal world exists, it is entirely unknowable. We can only ever grasp phenomenal reality. Science agreed that we can know only the material world and simply denied that there was any noumenal world at all, just as it had previously denied that there was any Cartesian domain of mind and any religious domain of soul. Science, like doubting Thomas, says no to anything it can't empirically detect. Illuminism, on the other hand, asserts that the noumenal domain not only exists, it is primary, the ground of existence. Moreover, phenomenal and noumenal reality are both fully knowable via mathematics, because all phenomena and noumena are mathematical entities. Science, hitherto, has been the tool for probing the empirical, material, phenomenal world, while metaphysics, literally what comes after physics, is the term traditionally applied to the study of the noumenal universe. Religion also makes comments about the noumenal universe, but in a faith-based, irrational, idiotic way where the statements of prophets and holy texts are regarded as some sort of absolute truth revealed by God. We shall ignore the claims of mainstream religion since they are more or less absurd. The Western Abrahamic religions of faith quite literally have zero truth content, and the Eastern religions are far too mystical and imprecise. The God of Abrahamism is as far from truth, reason, logic, enlightenment and reality as you could get. He is the false God, the God of the stupid and irrational and all those who have contempt for the truth. The truth shall set you free is the most ironic statement conceivable in the mouth of an Abrahamist. Science has proved spectacularly successful, while metaphysics has been speculative and resulted in no definitive view or consensus. Hence science has become the basis of modern rational thinking and has relentlessly promoted empiricism, materialism and atheism. Illuminism asserts that the only way to save metaphysics is via mathematics, since A. Mathematics is reality and B. Mathematics is the only subject about which anything precise can be said. Science's power derives from the fact that it uses mathematics and metaphysics doesn't. Metaphysics should be rebranded as the philosophy of ontological mathematics, along the same lines as the philosophy of science. One of the greatest tragedies of science is that most scientists are not only ignorant of philosophy but also actively hostile towards it. Such scientists dismiss the philosophy of science, which seeks to philosophically clarify what the findings of science actually mean. One of the greatest philosophers of science was Thomas Kuhn, and his book The Structure of Scientific Revolutions is a full-scale assault on the pretensions and delusions of scientists. It was Kuhn who introduced the famous concept of the paradigm shift. Even today, the vast majority of scientists have never read Kuhn, hence don't realize how he fatally undermined much of the ideology and dogmatism of science. Kuhn believed that scientists had a great deal to learn from the study of the history of science, and Illuminism agrees entirely with this. In fact, the same is true of every subject. Unless you understand something's history, you don't have any deep understanding of it at all. You don't know how it came to be where it is and what debates, controversies, dilemmas, difficulties and dialectics fueled the journey. Scientists, sadly, are as ignorant of the history of science as they are of the philosophy of science, hence are much less effective at science itself. The teaching of science should always begin with the history and philosophy of the subject before people start learning science itself. The same is true of mathematics. Although we are asserting that mathematics is the truth of reality, this book and series is not primarily a mathematics textbook. Rather, we will be examining the philosophy of particular mathematical concepts and showing how they define such apparently scientific phenomena as space and time. Space and time go right to the heart of ontological mathematics, and not a thing can be truly understood about the material world if a person is ignorant of the mathematical origins of space and time. It's a fact that no one outside the Illuminati has ever understood space and time, and, in this series, we will reveal the truth to everyone. The primary tools for understanding ontological mathematics are abstract mathematics, science and philosophy. Ontological mathematics should be regarded as the grand synthesis of mathematics, science and philosophy, turning them into one unified subject rather than three separate subjects. In doing so, it addresses all of the questions of religion. It brings religion into the domain of facts, evidence, reason, logic and, above all, mathematics. All faith-based elements of religion are exposed as ignorant, irrational, superstitious, crazy nonsense that feeds the madness of stupid fanatics, with whom our world is plagued, particularly in the case of Orthodox Jews, Muslims, more or less all of them, and Christian fundamentalists. Descartes. The visible world is merely an illusion that hides the real mathematical reality of things. Mathematics exists separately from human beings and is prior to the creation of the universe itself. Descartes. This is the classic Platonist view of mathematics, that it pre-exists everything else, that is the cause of everything else. It implies, for those of a creationist inclination, that God is a mathematician and uses mathematics to create something from nothing and order it into the cosmos, although mathematics is of course entirely absent from Abrahamic texts, notwithstanding the laughable claims of Kabbalists that the Torah is full of mathematics. What they mean is that numerology can be applied to the words of the text. I shall bring to light the true riches of our souls, opening up to each of us the means whereby we can find within ourselves all the knowledge we may need for the conduct of life and the means of using it in order to acquire all the knowledge that the human mind is capable of possessing. Descartes. Descartes was the first modern philosopher and declared of himself, "I am a spectator rather than an actor in the comedies of life." In terms of revealing the secrets of the universe, his greatest contribution was to divide the universe into mind and matter, distinguished in terms of what he called extension, length, breadth and height. While the material world was entirely concerned with extension, the mental world was unextended, hence outside the material world. Although this definition worked wonderfully in terms of clarifying the difference between mind and matter, and remains the ultimate definition, it created an enormous problem. How could they interact since they were so different and did not occupy the same space? This conundrum created two radically different philosophical schools, materialism and idealism. Materialism was championed by science and denied that the independent mental domain existed at all. It wasn't extended, hence it wasn't there. After all, it was impossible to detect with the human senses. No one could see it, hear it, touch it, smell it or taste it. What experiment could possibly reveal its existence? How could you collect any scientific data regarding it? Wasn't it just exposing the reality that the immaterial, unextended domain of the soul and God was a fantasy? Science is, at core, pure empiricism, materialism and atheism. These terms are all effectively synonymous. Although there are scientists who profess their belief in God, these are intellectually dishonest individuals who are trying to have their cake and eat it. If you accept the materialist paradigm, you have left no room for God, the soul or even for free will. You have placed the whole universe, including human beings, within an inexorable chain of physical cause and effect determined by scientific forces. Since no one claims that the laws of science have free will and can do their own thing whenever they feel like it, there is therefore no conceivable mechanism by which free will can operate. Kant, an idealist, addressed the Cartesian problem by declaring that while there was only one universe, the mental one, it had two aspects, a noumenal universe of things in themselves, which was entirely unknowable, and a phenomenal universe of these things in themselves as they appear to our senses, which had all the characteristics of the material world, without of course being material. We understand the world so well because it is in fact created by our own minds. Since we can't ever escape from our minds, we can never see things as they truly are, free of the constructions our minds have imposed on them, free of the systemic illusion to which we are prey. So, for Kant, the phenomenal world corresponded to the world of science ruled by deterministic laws of cause and effect created by our minds and not inherent in any alleged external material world. However, the unknowable noumenal domain afforded Kant the opportunity to claim that it was there that God, the soul and free will existed, although, as he admitted, we could never know anything about them. This was an ingenious and highly influential scheme that explained the scientific world while, unlike scientific materialism, leaving legitimate room for the free will that we all believe ourselves to have. Scientists of course dismissed Kant's dualistic philosophy, just as they had previously dismissed Descartes'. They said that the so-called noumenal universe was, by definition, unknowable and beyond any form of detection, hence was an entirely spurious, redundant and empty concept. They also rejected the notion that the scientific universe was a creation of our minds rather than exactly what it seemed to be, an external material world obeying scientific laws that come from outside rather than inside our minds. What Kant had effectively done was to recast the Cartesian philosophy in slightly different terminology, and with one radical twist. Descartes had proposed two domains, mental and physical. The physical domain was exactly as scientific materialists conceived it, an objective, external reality subject to inexorable scientific laws. The mental domain, on the other hand, was unextended and scientifically undetectable. Scientific materialism immediately dispensed with it altogether, especially since no one who supported Descartes could convincingly explain how mind and matter interacted. Kant's noumenal universe is much the same as Descartes' mental domain, outside space and time, unextended and undetectable. However, whereas the mental domain, for Descartes, was strictly for consciousness, I think therefore I am. The mental, noumenal domain for Kant is for everything. Every phenomenal object has a noumenal counterpart. Kant's extraordinary innovation was to say that our minds operate mentally on these mental objects, noumena, in a coherent, systematic and predictable way that turns them all other than minds themselves into phenomenal rather than noumenal objects, that is, into objects in space and time, subject to the inexorable cause and effect of scientific law. Kant said that space and time provide the conditions for sensory experience. The formal principle of our intuition, space and time, is the condition under which anything can be an object of our senses. This means that spatial and temporal relations are only experienced by the passive, receptive part of the mind, which Kant called intuition, as opposed to the active part concerned with intellect. In other words, everything, for Kant, is actually mental, including space and time. Minds impose the systematic illusion of a scientific, lawful, objective, material universe. One way of thinking about Kant's noumena and phenomena is within the context of Plato's domain of forms and his demiurge, the public craftsman. For Plato, the demiurge took the eternal forms and imprinted them on the universal clay matter to fashion a material copy of the perfect domain of mental forms. For Kant, Plato's well-defined forms are replaced by the mysterious noumena, seeds of ideas. We might say, our own minds take the role of the demiurge. We fashion the noumena into the stuff of the phenomenal world not by stamping them on matter, but by applying mental categories and intuitions to them, most especially of causality, space and time. Rather than have a strict Cartesian mind-matter dualism, Kant has one mental world that manifests itself dualistically, 1. Things as they mentally are in themselves, which are never observed and are unknowable, especially minds themselves, and 2. Things as they appear to our senses, as material objects of science located in space and time and subject to causality. Kant had thus unified mind and matter by claiming that everything is in fact mental, but then divided them again as knowable mind created, material phenomena and unknowable mental noumena. He had resurrected the material world, but it was no longer actually material but phenomenal, of the order of appearance rather than reality, that is a grand illusion. As we have observed, scientific materialists were unimpressed and ignored all such talk. For them, the scientific world was absolutely real and no kind of mind-created phenomenon. Nevertheless, Kant's scheme, known as transcendental idealism because it pointed to the existence of higher truths that transcended our experience, was so intellectually ingenious and imposing that it caused an explosion of interest in idealism, led by great German geniuses, and culminating in the Illuminatus Hegel. Idealism addresses the Cartesian problem of mind-matter dualism by taking the opposite stance to materialism. Idealists say that the only reality we actually experience is the mental one. The only knowledge we have about the world is mental. We are nothing but entities that experience ideas, thoughts, feelings, sensations, impressions, intuitions, all mental rather than material states. If you removed our ideas of the world, you would have removed the world. Our ideas of the world are the world. So, whereas the materialists abolished the Cartesian mental world, the idealists abolished the Cartesian material world. According to materialism, there is an objective world independent of our minds, controlled by scientific laws of cause and effect that are equally independent of our minds. A scientific materialist can happily think of the universe as containing no minds at all, including his own. Science is about revealing the objective truth of a kind of dead, mindless, mechanical universe. Science has made no inroads at all into explaining life, mind or consciousness. All of its great successes concern the universe as a cemetery, or as a great clockwork mechanism incapable of exhibiting free will, desire or passion. According to idealism, our minds create the universe and there is no objective universe out there. The laws of science are created by our minds and do not exist outside them. It is in fact extremely difficult for materialists to account for the existence of scientific laws. If they are part of the extended material world, they must somehow be material. So where are they? What are they? Where are they stored? How can they affect everything all over the universe? How can any material thing know what laws to obey and indeed how to obey them? Where did these laws come from? Where were they before the Big Bang? In fact, how can laws exist at all? Why shouldn't the material world be a completely random, lawless place? Everything in the material world decays and runs down, but not the laws themselves, which always stay the same, hence are of a totally different and alien kind from the rest of the material world. Why are they immune to change when nothing is? No materialist has ever accounted for the laws of matter. Scientists talk of the heat death of the universe being caused by entropy and the second law of thermodynamics, but of course the second law of thermodynamics is not itself subject to any decay and heat death. That is, laws are of a wholly category from what they control. Why? A Platonic dualism has been invalidly introduced by science, eternal, immutable, perfect laws contrasted with transient, physical, imperfect objects relentlessly running out of usable energy. But scientific materialism rejects Plato, so it is therefore presented with a challenge so great that it has never once addressed it. Are the laws of materialism themselves material? If they're not, then how can they exist since only matter exists? If they are, then why aren't they subject to material decay like all other matter? It's not clear that any scientist has ever grasped the magnitude of this problem. By itself, this philosophical problem destroys the whole ideology of scientific materialism. Scientific materialism cannot be true because it cannot explain its own laws. It can't explain what they are ontologically, hence they are like magic. They're from fairyland. People take scientific materialism seriously not because of its philosophical coherence but because it works pragmatically, and its successes have indeed been wondrous. Materialism and idealism can both make strong cases that the opposing school is false, yet neither has ever landed a knockout blow. Isn't that astonishing? How can two so radically different views somehow both be powerfully true and persuasive? Surely this points to the need for a tertium quid, a third thing, that reconciles the opposing schools. Illuminism is precisely the tertium quid, and yet fulfills the task through the ultimate truth, mathematics. Unfortunately, Illuminism has two immense obstacles to overcome. On the one hand, scientific materialism has been staggeringly successful in terms of technology, manufacturing, the military-industrial complex and medicine. It has authentically changed our world beyond recognition. To any thinking person, science is immensely persuasive. It's no surprise that someone like Richard Dawkins, a fervent atheist and materialist, is so widely admired. Yet even Dawkins and his followers can do nothing to dent the confidence of the second obstacle, the irrationalists, that is the Jews, Christians, Muslims and karmists. The Abrahamists have actually become more fanatical and irrational as science has grown stronger. They are in much greater denial than ever before. They hate reason and prize irrational faith with a great passion. A medieval thinker such as Dante was aware of no serious conflict between science and religion. In fact, the two disciplines seemed in beautiful and perfect harmony, united by reason. It is in the present day that the gulf between mainstream religion and science has become unbridgeable. It is no longer rationally possible to think that Abrahamism has anything in common with science. If you accept the scientific facts, then you cannot be an Abrahamist. Abrahamism has been formally refuted as a logical possibility in the scientific world. Many Abrahamists have therefore cultivated an extreme distaste for science. They are perfectly aware that if science is true, their beliefs are false. Rather than abandon the beliefs with which they were brainwashed since birth, they have chosen to abandon reason. Like Luther, they have declared that reason is the devil's whore. Nowhere is the abyss between science and Abrahamism clearer than in the case of Darwinian evolution. The situation couldn't be simpler. If evolution is true, the creator God of Abrahamism does not exist. The whole point of evolution is that it requires no creator. It is a self-propelling process. Natural selection has nothing to do with truth or morality. It cares only about reproductive success, about the passing on and spread of particular genes, hence Dawkins' famous and brilliant book The Selfish Gene. Now, some Abrahamists seek to claim that their creator God created the evolutionary process. But this is untenable, and indeed spectacularly so. Why would a creator God establish a process so savage, so immoral, so far from truth and goodness, that it looks like pure evil? The brutal and bloody law of the jungle is what you would expect in hell, not heaven. If God were responsible for evolution, then he would be Satan, not God. He would have created an arena of endless killing and pain, for no apparent reason. How can a moral God create a process devoid of morality? Is a shark an immoral serial killer, or does it simply kill to live? Humans are killers par excellence. They kill for fun. A God who sets in motion a perpetual death machine of mind-boggling cruelty cannot be God. When God ordered Abraham to kill his own innocent son for no reason at all, he made it clear to all people possessed of reason that he was not God. Since evolution requires no one to get it started, it's just part of the fabric of the universe, why would God invent a system that makes him look superfluous? Is he actively trying to baffle and bewilder people? Is he perverse? If so, he cannot be God. If God is the true creator, why didn't he simply create, just as it says in the Bible? Why didn't he create one planet, one moon and one sun, and put humanity on the planet? What point in creation is served by the countless planets, moons, stars and galaxies that litter the infinite universe? The universe is so incomprehensibly large and expanding that there are things out there that humanity will never see. So why are they there? For whose benefit? What do they have to do with Adam and Eve on Earth, the alleged centerpiece of God's universe? The hypothesis of a creator God cannot be sustained in the face of evolution and an infinite universe. Only someone insanely opposed to reason would continue to support the concept of a creator God. What's the difference between irrational people and mad people? Can we distinguish between the two? If you reject reason, can you even be called human, or are you just an animal? Descartes, a supreme rationalist, expressed the view that mathematics provides the fundamental structure shared by all branches of knowledge. That being the case, why does neither the Torah, Bible nor Quran refer at all to mathematics? If mathematics is the key to existence, the last place where you will discover the secrets of reality is in the Abrahamic holy texts. Can anyone point to even one item of worthwhile knowledge offered by the 3 books allegedly authored by the creator of the universe? Does God hate knowledge, or does he hate the idea of human beings having knowledge? The books of Abrahamism are irrational texts of anti-knowledge and hatred of intellect. They contain no intellectual sustenance at all. They are books of Pavlovian dominance and submission. Reason. Given that Descartes believed in 2 essentially separate domains of matter, extended, and mind, unextended, he could not conceive of a vacuum existing in the material world. If a vacuum contained nothing, it would be unextended, hence mind-like, an impossibility in the physical world of extension. Therefore, Descartes argued for the existence of a plenum, a completely full material universe, with no empty space whatever. He also rejected the concept of indivisible atoms. If they existed in the material world then, no matter how small, they were extended, hence divisible. Instead, he referred to infinitely divisible corpuscles, although he never considered what should happen if they reached their indivisible limit. Leibniz did and made them his dimensionless monades. These corpuscles, Descartes said, had primary, objective qualities, intrinsic to themselves, of extension, motion, mass, volume, position, number etc. They also had secondary, subjective qualities that were not intrinsic to them but resulted from the effects they had on the human senses. These secondary qualities were color, smell, taste, the sounds they caused us to hear and the way they felt to touch. In other words, all of our sensory information is secondary, subjective and unreliable. Think of color. It can be radically changed by the prevailing conditions. In a red-lit room, everything appears reddish. As it gets darker, our color vision fades to black and white. Just look around your room before you go to sleep. There's no color. Descartes' material universe was thoroughly mechanistic, mathematical and predictable, and gave a huge boost to scientific thinking. He advised researchers to divide all big problems into smaller ones. The reductive, analytical approach, to argue from the simple to the complex, and to check everything carefully. As a rationalist, Descartes thought that only pure reason yielded reliable knowledge, and reason relied on mathematics and logic. He was dismissive of the knowledge we get from our unreliable senses. No sure knowledge could come from such a dubious source. The opposing school to rationalism is empiricism, which asserts that only our senses can yield knowledge about the external world. How can staying in a room using your pure reason tell you anything about a frog? You can learn about frogs only by gathering information about them via your senses. Without that information, reason is superfluous. Rationalism and idealism are natural alliance, while empiricism and materialism represent the opposite alliance. In order to explain the source of irrationality, Descartes contrasted will and intellect. He asserted that, driven by will, we often choose to believe confused, unclear ideas. Willpower, it seems, has primacy over reason. This is a critical point. Abrahamists are irrational because reason, it appears to them, takes them down the road of atheism and certain death, whereas Abrahamism promises them eternal life in paradise, albeit without any rational basis. Is it any wonder that legions of ill-educated, fearful people find reason rather less appealing than irrational faith? Our free will often leads us into absolute irrationality. It is never emphasized enough that only a small proportion of humanity is guided by reason. The rest are controlled by will. Therefore, there's little point addressing the masses with rational arguments. You must target their emotions and will if you want to win the debate. Moses, Jesus and Muhammad were classic irrationalists, making crude appeals to emotion and will, and using threats of extreme and indeed eternal pain for anyone who disobeyed them. Humans are creatures of will, not of reason and intellect. Will is emotional and full of desire. If we want to evolve as a species, we must learn to moderate our will and increase our reason. Imagine we were programming artificial intelligences that we wanted to be something like us. We certainly wouldn't make them exclusively logical and rational. But here is the big question: how do you program will into a machine? How do you make machines irrational? Aren't will and irrationality what truly separate man and machine? How can humanity progress without increased reliance on reason? Can increased will lead to any evolution? Or does it just drag us back to the jungle, and even further back to the primordial slime? A huge amount of capitalist advertising is directed straight at the will and emotions. Capitalism revolves around the will and emotions, not around reason. Abrahamism revolves around the will and emotions. We can't take the path to divinity unless we embrace reason. We have no choice. Platonism. Platonism, derived from Pythagoreanism, is used to describe the stance of those mathematicians who assert that mathematics pre-exists humanity, is indeed eternally coded into the universe, and determines its structure. Mathematics is thus real and has independent existence. As far as Descartes was concerned, all human knowledge might one day be mathematized. Although Descartes wasn't an Illuminatus, he shared exactly the same vision as the Illuminati, a complete mathematical explanation of existence. If mathematics is indeed universal and integral to existence, an irrational alien race would also be mathematical. The only language in which we would be able to infallibly communicate with them would be mathematics. So, is mathematics something that rational people discover about the universe, or is something that rational minds invent? The latter option seems inconceivable, and yet if it were true it would surely lend maximum support to Kant's hypothesis that minds create reality. If a mind can construct something as complex as mathematics, what couldn't it invent? The position that mathematics is an invention of mind is known as formalism or relativism. It asserts that mathematics is something akin to an enormously more elaborate version of chess. It has its rules and immensely complex games can be played, but they have no connection with reality. We use the initial rules to create additional yet consistent rules, but all we are ever doing is playing a more and more sophisticated game. An argument has been advanced that mathematics is a closed system, hence cannot yield any knowledge about anything other than itself. There are no avenues for introducing non-mathematical parameters, hence mathematics can never provide new knowledge. This argument is actually key to the entire Illuminist project, because Illuminism asserts that mathematics is indeed a closed system, but it further asserts that there is nothing at all external to mathematics, that is, mathematics is everything. To say that mathematics is closed is not to place any limitations on its explanatory power, since there's nothing outside it, nothing else to which it would have to open itself. Illuminism declares that everything that exists and all authentic knowledge of everything that exists are entirely defined mathematically. Mathematics is it. There's nothing else. By the end of this series of books, we hope we will have persuaded you of this astounding fact. Just look at the best theories of science, almost entirely expressed mathematically. If mathematics is simply a formalism, a self-consistent game, then the same must also be true of the most successful scientific theories, which means that we know nothing of the world, and it might as well be Kant's noumenal universe, about which we must remain silent. Just look at computers and computer simulations, wholly mathematical. Where would we be without our computers? Has anything proved as successful as applied mathematics? The abstract work of Bernard Riemann on non-Euclidean curved spaces would once have seemed to be mathematics in the purest formalist sense, with no connection with external reality, assumed to be entirely Euclidean, yet this work became the bedrock of Einstein's general theory of relativity and is used in the cosmological theories describing the evolution of the universe. Platonist mathematics is what we define as ontological mathematics. The home of the soul. Descartes famously identified the pineal gland as where the mind or soul exists and interacts with the physical body. He imagined the soul as a homunculus, a little man, who receives all of the information flowing in from the senses and processes it all, adding his own reason and logic to make sense of it. It is as if our soul is in a private cinema watching the images being sent, via the eyes, from the external world. The soul itself does not interact with the external world, while the body that does is in some sense just a human automaton. Behaviorist philosopher Gilbert Ryle referred to this model of a private soul inside a kind of mechanical man as the ghost in the machine. For Descartes, nature, in its material aspect, is an automaton, and he held that animals have neither souls nor feelings. They are just machines. In fact, even humans are just machines materially, meaning that doctors are not healers but mechanics and repairmen. In Descartes' mechanistic universe, matter affects matter only through physical contact. Matter, motion and collisions are the only elements in this system. There is no action at a distance, no forces operating across space. It was a corollary of this position that if the motions of all particles were known, we would be able to know the future by calculating how the system would evolve with time. Everything, in principle, could be explained. This is still, more or less, the position adopted by scientific materialism. Kant. No confession of faith, no appeal to holy names nor any observance of religious ceremonies can help to gain salvation. Kant. If Descartes was the founder of modern philosophy, professional philosophers tend to regard Kant as its most towering figure. Kant's project was to define what could be known for sure and to reveal where thinkers strayed into error by overextending concepts beyond their proper domain. The effect of his philosophy was to promote skepticism and to undermine faith in conventional religion and metaphysics. Although he thought he was succeeding in accounting for the power of science and making sense of it, scientists never adopted his view that reality is a construction of mind. Science continued to assume as an unshakable fact an external world regulated by laws external to our minds. For scientists, these laws shaped the world of minds rather than mind shaping these laws. Space and time, cause and effect, were real rather than mind creations allowing us to comprehend reality. Illuminism is a means of reconciling Kant's views with science and showing how both can be correct, despite their apparently unbridgeable contradictions. Kant, while no atheist, was contemptuous of much of religion. He referred to petitionary prayer as the wheedling of God. If you think about it, petitioning God on behalf of your own naked self-interest is one of the least godly things you can do. All the masses who pray to God to cure their sickness or allow them to win the lottery or to make someone love or to make their team win are not treating God as a moral arbiter and steersman of the cosmos but as a super genie who grants wishes. They've made him into a witch doctor or wizard working with spells and charms. Their God is one of magic. He's from the world of fairies, elves, goblins and things that go bump in the night. This isn't religion at all. It's Harry Potter on a cosmic scale, with God as the top wizard with the most powerful wand, and Lord Voldemort as Satan. Most religious people subscribe to a vision of a world of unseen spirits operating according to the principles of magic. In other words, their vision is one of superstition, fantasy and wishful thinking. It has zero connection with theology, philosophy, reason, logic, science and mathematics. It's pure mythos, story and fable and rejects logos, reason, completely. Only the ill-educated and stupid subscribe to conventional religion. What is faith if not the spectacular ability to wholly suspend disbelief and believe in unadulterated magic? Kant went out of his way to be indisposed whenever his official participation in religious ceremonies was required. What a wise man! Despite that, Nietzsche, a radical atheist, categorized Kant as merely a cunning Christian. He saw Kant's philosophy as a desperate rearguard action by Christianity to carve out a space for itself, the noumenal universe, where it could remain permanently unmolested by science, a realm of pure faith rather than knowledge, since it was literally unknowable. Additionally, he viewed Kant's famous categorical imperative as a backdoor to conventional Christian morality. As usual, obligations were placed on human beings to toe the line of the authorities. Nietzsche's project was to destroy all Christian and metaphysical values, and to bring about a revaluation of all values that would transform humanity and lead to higher humans, supermen. There's a lot to be said for Nietzsche's analysis of Kant's philosophy. In many ways, Kant staged the last and best defense of the Christian worldview, but with God shunted off to the noumenal universe where he could neither interfere nor be interfered with in the ever-growing dominance of science and the phenomenal world. When he was at school, Kant had a low opinion of his teachers, saying of them, they were incapable of inflaming the sparks within us for the study of philosophy or mathematics, but could certainly blow them out. It's vital that all teachers should not only know their subject inside out but also should love it and enthuse every student with their passion. Ancient Greece. In this book, we are going to do some time travel. We are going back to the dawn of rational human thinking, to ancient Greece and the brilliant pre-Socratic philosophers. In our time expedition, we will deliberately avoid the claims of the mainstream religions, especially those of Judaism and its absurd creationist God. There can be no doubt that the fanatical, bearded prophets of the Jews were the authors of the greatest error in history, both intellectually and morally. There is not a single worthwhile aspect to the Jewish religion. Everything about it is fallacious and indeed evil. Their creator is a torture god, a monster, a tyrant, a devil. Judaism is the ultimate sadomasochistic exploration of life, with the most submissive, masochist race conceivable searching for the most dominant sadist the cosmos can offer. That ultimate sadist, a maniacal torturer and killer, is Jehovah. The founding tale of Judaism tells you everything you need to know about this evil religion. The first Jew, Abraham, was ordered to murder his own son for no reason at all, and immediately agreed to do so to show his absolute, mindless and slavish obedience to his God. Any sane person would imagine that Abraham would defy to his dying breath this monstrous order and the creature that issued it. How could it be anything other than the devil himself that gave such a homicidal and evil command? Instead, Abraham complied and worshipped this devil. He cared not one jot for the life of his son. He did nothing to defend his son. Imagine a Hollywood movie about a man who was commanded by a supernatural being to kill his son. The story would be about how the father fought to the death to fight the monstrous being and save his son's life. But not in the Jewish movie. Abraham immediately picks up a dagger and says, "Where shall I stab? Heart or throat?" And this is the greatest story ever told? This is the story that has captivated billions of human beings. It's insane. Even Hollywood, full of Jews, has been unable to make a movie glorifying Abraham. No one could make that psychopath a sympathetic hero. Abraham's moral compass was so flawed that he imagined that obeying the devil was somehow good. But, of course, Judaism has nothing to do with morality. It's about absolute obedience to ultimate power, to a power devoid of all morality, Satan. The Jews obey 620 commandments. Obeying is what Jews do, what they love. It defines everything about them. Judaism is the supreme slay religion. There is no moral dimension to Judaism except in the sense that obeying 620 commandments is deemed good and disobeying them is evil. Whether or not each commandment is good or evil, and surely Jehovah's order to Abraham to kill his innocent son for no reason was as evil as it could possibly get, is not something to which Jews give any thought. Islam, the religion of the Muslims, means submission, that is, Muslims are those who mindlessly and slavishly submit to Allah, just as the Jews do to Jehovah. Once again, there is no morality whatever involved in this religion. It's all about obeying. As for the Christians, they worship someone calling himself the son of the monster Jehovah. Obviously, if Jehovah is evil, so is someone styling himself as his son. Jesus is the Antichrist. Have you noticed that Christians always refer to Yehoshua ben Yosef, Jesus Christ, as Lord and never as friend, brother, guide, helper, companion, confederate or comrade? It would be more honest if they called their overlord master, indeed they often do, or, even better, Führer. No, there is no rational reason for any thinking person to stray anywhere near these mad and evil religions of human enslavement to a cosmic tyrant who threatens everyone with eternal hellfire if they don't obey him to the letter. Abrahamism is the expression of Hegel's master-slave dialectic with God as the supreme master and Abrahamists voluntarily casting themselves as the perfect slaves. For weak, submissive, superstitious, irrational and slave-like human beings who have no initiative, no strength, no self-respect, no dignity and no ability to think for themselves, Abrahamism is the perfect religion. But our task is to pursue the thinking person's route through life. Logos, reason, was born in ancient Greece and its colonies. We shall review the astoundingly insightful questions the ancient Greek philosophers asked about the nature of existence and the ingenious answers they offered. And, later in this series, we will provide the true and definitive explanations of all of the cosmic issues with which the Greeks wrestled. The Greeks were lacking only a few vital mathematical concepts. Without those, they had no chance of answering the ultimate questions of existence. But now humanity possesses all of the mathematical knowledge it needs to provide the big picture. This series provides, for the first time ever in the public domain, the Illuminati's mathematical big picture of reality, the answer to everything, the grand unified theory of existence.